Most parents try to build a sleep routine by searching for the right schedule. They find one that looks reasonable, try it for 3 nights, and abandon it when the baby doesn't cooperate. The problem is not the schedule. The problem is that a schedule without the biological logic behind it is just a list of times. When the baby pushes back, there is nothing to adjust, because you don't know why you were doing it in the first place. A sleep routine works because it does 2 specific things to the baby's biology. It anchors the circadian rhythm by providing consistent timing cues that the brain uses to anticipate sleep, and it creates a conditioned sequence, a chain of events that the brain learns to associate with sleep onset, so that the routine itself begins to trigger the physiological preparation for sleep before the baby is even in the crib. When you understand those 2 mechanisms, you can build a routine that actually holds, and you know exactly what to adjust when something stops working. In this video, you'll get a step-by-step guide to building a sleep routine for your baby, from the newborn period through 12 months. Each step has a reason. The reasons are what make it work. If this channel is new to you, subscribe. We publish new videos every week on infant development and behavior based on current scientific evidence. Number 1, establish the right timing. The first decision in building a sleep routine is not what the routine contains. It is when it happens. The circadian rhythm, the internal biological clock that regulates sleep and wakefulness, is calibrated primarily by light and by the timing of recurring events. In adults, the circadian rhythm is well established and relatively stable. In infants, it is still forming. From birth to approximately 6 weeks, it does not exist in a functional sense. Newborns have no consolidated day-night differentiation. Their sleep is distributed across the full 24-hour period with no consistent pattern. Around 6 to 8 weeks, the circadian rhythm begins to develop. The brain starts producing melatonin, the hormone that signals nighttime, in a pattern that follows the light-dark cycle. This is the earliest point at which timing-based intervention begins to have biological traction. From this point forward, consistency of timing is the most powerful input you can give the developing circadian system. The brain learns what time to expect sleep by receiving sleep cues at the same time repeatedly. A bedtime that shifts by 2 hours from one night to the next provides no stable anchor for this learning. A bedtime that happens within a 30-minute window each night gives the brain a clear, predictable signal. In practical terms, choose a bedtime and protect it. For most babies between 2 and 6 months, a bedtime between 7 and 8:30 in the evening aligns well with the natural rise in melatonin production that occurs after the day's light exposure ends. From 6 months onward, many babies do best with a bedtime between 6:30 and 7:30. The exact time matters less than the consistency. Pick a window. Hold it. Number 2, calculate the last wake window. Timing the routine correctly is not just about the clock on the wall, it is about where the baby is in their biological sleep-wake cycle at the time the routine begins. A baby who begins their bedtime routine while still in the middle of an active wake window, before sleep pressure has built to the appropriate level, will resist sleep regardless of how well designed the routine is. A baby who begins their bedtime routine already past the point of optimal sleep pressure, overtired, with cortisol already elevated, will also resist sleep for the opposite reason. The goal is to start the routine so that it ends precisely when the baby's sleep window opens. Wake windows. The amount of time a baby can comfortably stay awake between sleep periods. Give you the framework for this calculation. In the first 2 months, the last wake window before bed is typically 45 minutes to 1 hour. From 2 to 4 months, 1 to 1.5 hours. From 4 to 6 months, 1.5 to 2 hours. From 6 to 9 months, 2 to 3 hours. From 9 to 12 months, 3 to 4 hours. The calculation is straightforward. Note when the last nap ended. Add the age-appropriate wake window. That is approximately when the sleep window will open. Work backward from that point by the length of your routine, typically 15 to 30 minutes, to determine when the routine should begin. If the last nap ended at 4 in the afternoon and your baby is 7 months old, the sleep window will open around 6:30 to 7. Begin the routine at 6 or 6:15. By the time the routine ends and the baby is in the crib, the sleep window is open and sleep pressure is at its peak. Number 3, design the sequence. The sequence of events in the bedtime routine is what creates the conditioned cue. The brain learns to associate the sequence with sleep onset through repetition. After enough repetitions, the sequence itself begins to trigger the physiological preparation for sleep. Heart rate slows, core body temperature begins to drop, melatonin production increases, before the last step of the routine is even complete. For this conditioning to work, 2 things must be true. The sequence must be the same every night, in the same order. And it must move consistently from higher stimulation to lower stimulation. never the reverse. A practical sequence for most babies from 6 weeks onward looks like this. Begin with a brief transition signal that marks the start of the routine, dimming the lights in the main living area, turning off screens, reducing the noise level in the environment. This transition does not need to be elaborate. It needs to be consistent. The brain learns that this change in environment means what comes next. Move into a warm bath. A brief warm bath, 5 to 10 minutes, produces a drop in core body temperature as the baby cools afterward, and this temperature drop is a direct physiological trigger for sleep onset. The bath does not need to happen every single night for the routine to function, but if it is included, it should always occupy the same position in the sequence. Follow the bath with a consistent caregiving sequence, dressing the baby in sleep clothes, dimming the room to near darkness, and moving to the feeding. The feeding, whether breast or bottle, should happen in the darkened sleep environment, calmly, with minimal stimulation. The goal is to end the feeding before the baby is fully asleep, so that the final transition to the crib happens while the baby is drowsy but still awake. This is not always achievable in early infancy, and it is not an emergency if it isn't. But working gradually toward it, ending the feed slightly earlier each week, giving the baby more opportunity to complete the final step of sleep onset independently, builds a skill that pays off significantly in the months ahead. End the routine with 1 to 2 minutes of low stimulation contact in the sleep space, holding the baby in the dark, a consistent phrase spoken quietly, a brief song, the same words, the same song, every night, then into the crib. Number 4, set up the environment before the routine begins. The sleep environment is not a backdrop. It is an active input to the baby's nervous system. Setting it up before the routine begins means the baby is moving into the right physiological conditions from the first step, not scrambling to create them at the last moment. Darkness should be in place before the routine begins. Complete blackout in the sleep space is the goal, not dim, not low lighting, but as close to complete darkness as the room allows. Light suppresses melatonin production. Even brief exposure to bright light during the pre-sleep period delays the onset of the melatonin rise and pushes the sleep window later. Use the dimmest possible light source for any caregiving tasks that require visibility. Temperature should be set before the baby enters the sleep space. The optimal range for infant sleep is between 68 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 to 22 degrees Celsius. A room that is too warm disrupts sleep and increases risk. Dress the baby appropriately for the ambient temperature so that no blanket is needed. White noise, if you use it, should be running before the baby is brought into the room. The goal is to have the auditory environment already stable when the baby arrives, not to introduce it as a last-minute addition. Place the white noise machine at least 7 feet from the crib at a volume no louder than a normal conversation. The crib should be empty. No pillows, no blankets, no stuffed animals, no positioning devices, a firm mattress, and a fitted sheet. This is not minimalism as a preference. It is the configuration that supports safe sleep. Number 5, manage the first few weeks. A sleep routine does not produce results on the first night. It produces results after consistent repetition has given the brain enough data to form the association between the sequence and sleep onset. Most families begin to see a meaningful difference after 2 to 3 weeks of consistent implementation. The first few nights are often the hardest because you are introducing structure to a system that has not had it. The baby does not yet know that the bath leads to the feed, leads to the crib, leads to sleep. They are encountering an unfamiliar sequence. Some resistance is normal and does not mean the routine is wrong. What undermines a new routine most reliably is inconsistency under pressure. The baby protests during the routine and the parent skips a step, extends a step, or abandons the sequence entirely to try something that worked before. Each time this happens, the conditioning is interrupted. The brain cannot form a stable association from an unstable sequence. Hold the routine even when the baby resists. Shorter sessions, calmer execution, less stimulation, yes. A different sequence, no. One adjustment worth making explicitly. If the routine consistently ends with the baby overtired, crying intensely, very difficult to settle, the routine is starting too late. Move the start time 15 minutes earlier and reassess after 3 to 4 nights. If the routine consistently ends with the baby not yet sleepy, alert, engaged, not showing early sleep signals, the routine is starting too early. The sleep window is not yet open when the routine ends. Move the start time 15 minutes later. These small adjustments, made one at a time with a few nights between each change, are how you dial in a routine that fits your specific baby's biology rather than a generic template. Number 6, adapt as the baby develops. A sleep routine built for a 2-month-old will not work unchanged for a 7-month-old. The routine needs to evolve with the baby's changing sleep architecture, wake windows, and nap schedule. The most significant transitions to anticipate are the following. Around 3 to 4 months, infant sleep architecture permanently reorganizes. The baby moves from a 2-stage sleep system to a multi-stage one that more closely resembles adult sleep. This transition often disrupts previously reliable sleep patterns. Even babies who were sleeping long stretches may begin waking more frequently. The routine itself does not need to change fundamentally, but the wake window before bed may need to be recalibrated, and the sleep onset conditions become more important. A baby with a new, more adult-like sleep architecture will surface into lighter sleep more frequently during the night, and the conditions under which they fell asleep at the beginning of the night are what they will look for when they stir between cycles. Around 6 months, most babies drop from 3 naps to 2. This shift changes the timing of the last nap, and therefore the start time of the bedtime routine. Recalculate the last wake window after the nap schedule changes. Around 9 to 12 months, many babies transition from 2 naps to 1. This is the most disruptive nap transition of the first year. Bedtime often needs to move earlier during this transition, sometimes significantly earlier, because the gap between the single nap and bedtime is longer than the baby's wake window can comfortably accommodate. These transitions are not failures of the routine, they are biological milestones. Treat them as recalibration points rather than reasons to abandon the structure. A sleep routine is not a script you follow until it works and then stop thinking about. It is a living system that adapts as your baby grows. The 2 mechanisms that make it work, circadian anchoring and conditioned sequence I, remain constant. Everything else is adjusted as the baby's biology changes. Build the routine around those 2 mechanisms and you will always know what to adjust and why. The free guide in the description covers developmental milestones across the full first year, including the nap transitions, sleep regressions, and behavioral changes that affect the sleep routine at each stage. Download it and use it alongside what you learned here. The next video covers tantrums, what causes them, what not to do, and how to respond without losing control. Watch it next.